The 80s was an interesting time. At the apex of the pop music landscape was the trifecta of Prince, Michael Jackson, and Madonna. While Michael Jackson was busy being an icon, and Madonna was contrasting her all-American white girl image with her brazen for the time sexuality, Prince was busy being a pioneer. Now, that's far from a controversial take in 2023, but I think Prince himself, outside of music buff circles, is still strangely underrated. Michael Jackson's cultural and artistic impact, and by extension his appeal, is easily discernible at a glance. He was everywhere, and he still is. He was the epitome of cool. The moonwalk, the lean, the glove, the voice, the red jacket, the Thriller video. But as great as Michael was, he wasn't subversive. He's a pop star, first and foremost, and he was good at it. The best ever, perhaps. And this isn't to suggest that his work lacks artistic depth. Thriller and Off the Wall are some of the most immaculate and tightly crafted albums ever, but they don't go to the places that Prince's best work does. Prince to the masses is mostly remembered as the purple-clad purveyor of new wavy pop rock music, and I think this is criminal. It takes an intent, critical ear to really unpack why Prince was great. So to get into it, by 1985, Prince had already been at the zenith of his fame following the release of the smash hit Purple Rain, and he was over it. Warner Brothers wanted another Purple Rain, and Prince scoffed at the notion. So his next album, Around the World in a Day, was released with little to no marketing, and it baffled critics with cryptic imagery and esoteric production. I like to think Around the World was a reset button, a palate cleanser. Its soul hit, Raspberry Beret, is a gorgeous piece of Baroque pop psychedelia, but you get the sense Prince wrote it just to satisfy Warner Brothers. The album as a whole isn't a great record, not really. There's flashes of brilliance in the title track, Raspberry Beret. Condition of the Heart is a really pretty piano piece, and Pop Life is bitter and funky. But as a whole, it's Prince playing with sounds and textures that he wouldn't perfect until a year later, or 2 years later. So for now, I'll skip Parade. I spent a lot of time building to my point. Enter Sign of the Times. Originally slated to be a much larger album called Crystal Ball, Warner Brothers struck this down by corporate decree and forced Prince to curtail his ambitions into a mere 14-track double album. With this record, the flowery embellishments and string sections that cropped up on his past 3 albums were gone, as Prince had pulled the plug on his backing band, The Revolution. Wendy, Lisa, and Matt Fink's taste, namely the Beatles, Gustav Mahler, and even Led Zeppelin, had obviously rubbed off on Prince, which was good. But Sign of the Times meant a return to the insular, single-minded sound of Prince's earliest work, with some remnants of his new sensibilities. So, most noteworthy was the best track on the album, If I Was Your Girlfriend, which is a masterclass in subversive, experimental pop that still sounds like nothing else. Its warped, distorted sound is characteristic of Prince's interest in the Fairlight CMI, a favorite of non-contemporary but similarly brilliant Kate Bush. By today's standards, it's an incredibly primitive, dated machine as the 8-bit resolution and paltry sample rate, and it was really only capable of crackling, ghastly textures and tacky orchestra stabs. But it was the first time such a wide array of sounds could be triggered by keyboard. It was a sampler. It was true synthesis. And it was made for one-man shows like Prince, and he took advantage. Because the sounds on the track have aged, the experience of If I Was Your Girlfriend is that of progressive period charm. It's old, but its outmoded sound choices have made it distinct with time, which paradoxically make it sound more forward-thinking. Thematically, If I Was Your Girlfriend explores the androgyny Prince had flirted with since his real first commercial appearance, detailing the envy he has for his lover's same-sex friends. His voice is manipulated to an almost feminine yelp, as it's convincing at times, but it still retains the qualities of Prince's voice. Other times, it's unnaturally deep, which suggests a gender identity in flux. If I Was Your Girlfriend is too uptight and cloying to really be sexy. It's so desiring of intimacy as to see gender as an obstacle, one that Prince himself can't quite overcome. Or maybe he can. Prince challenges the binary notions of gender and by extension straightforward pop music as a whole. By being a contradiction, a gray area, Prince shows us that gender's role in a relationship is sometimes not as straightforward as we make it out to be, which is a deconstruction of typical pop song narratives. It's Prince's answer to Running Up That Hill, and I'd be surprised if he hadn't heard it. It's easy to overlook how novel a concept gender fluidity was to most people in the 80s, but consider this was a culture that gasped when Madonna said she was gonna dress a man up in her love. So the cultural landscape in 1987 wasn't ready for what If I Was Your Girlfriend had to say. It was about 35 years too early for its themes to really resonate, as Kate Bush would later prove. And as a result, it was a fringe hit, by no means obscure, but still by definition a deep cut, just a beloved one. If I Was Your Girlfriend is atypical in every sense, conveying sounds and themes that would have been alien to the average listener in 1987. But as a whole, Sign of the Times was and still is a critical darling. Prince's earlier experiments had proved fruitful as his once messy, unformulated ideas had grown focused, ambitious, and